Okay, we're talking about the next steps in our application process. And so, second to that was school exploration. And that, while it can be crazy and frustrating, is probably one of the easier tasks they set before you this fall, especially if you don't try and do it in a one fell punch, like you do it gradually over time. So if you're like once a weekend, you're spending about an hour or so looking at one or two schools and going through their websites. But I want to give you some food for thought as you get into the December months about, again, how important it is to solidify that list. I want to talk to you about the power of informational interviewing in form of considering your letters of recommendation and some of your other factors. And then I want to talk to you about digging deeper into your experiences because those are going to be a huge part of what we do. And I apologize, I need to go yell at a child. Just a moment. I apologize. All right. So that's kind of what we're going to do today is kind of wrap some things up. So, there's lots of website tools out there. I think it's easy to get caught up in the Google world and just Google schools, like Google medical schools. And I don't think that's a good idea initially. I think that you need to use your resources to your abilities. These websites are the program organization websites. They're where the accreditation bodies sit. And so if you're thinking about medical school, you would probably look at the AAMC website, or DO schools, you'd look at the ACOMAS websites, or if you're thinking about physician assistant school, you'd look at the American Physician Assistant Education Association websites. Many of these organizations have school directories. And so what's nice about those is they have databases often that break down some of the schools. For MD and DO, they have the MSAR and the osteopathic or Choose DO School Explorers. For dental, they have the ADEA School Explorer. Again, I can't stress enough how powerful our resources are for you. Shannon and I both have free access to the MSAR. The Osteopathic Medical School Choose Explorer is free. You just have to fill out a little form that says you're interested. And then dental school one, we do have the School Explorer. Some of the other ones are free. The physical therapy, the PT CAS is free. The Farm CAS is free. So these are an easier way for you to get truly accredited, identifiable school information. Choose DO, for example, is doing a virtual expo. So they're doing a virtual fair on December 8th, and it's free. So that's another opportunity. And a lot of programs and schools will do these. So I really strongly suggest that you use these websites. They're powerful tools. Why is it so important to have a school list? Well, every school is different when it comes to prerequisite courses. Every program is different. And so you want to make sure that your final semesters at Boise State University, that you've covered your bases, or that you have a plan. You can be in progress with many of the prerequisite courses. You don't have to have them done. Obviously, you have to have the things done if you're taking an entrance exam that has that material on it. But knowing what your needs are is huge. I always tell students, no matter whether you're applying to PA school or you're applying to medical school or you're applying to PT school or you're applying to dental school, there's kind of two types of schools out there. There's the school that's going to be very open-ended about their prerequisite courses. That's not going to have specific prerequisites to require. And then there are going to be schools that are going to be very prescriptive in nature. And so they're going to list out exactly what they're expecting. And you never want to make assumptions. You never want to go, oh, I assume that they mean, when they say biology, they mean anatomy and physiology, when they could very well mean general bio. And so if there's a doubt or a confusion or a question on a website, you need to call that school. This is not something that Shannon and I have control over. This is something you really have to do. And now we're getting to the nitty gritty. Now we're getting to the point that next summer you're likely going to apply. And if that is the case, then you really need to have that school list clear. The other is admission requirements. Sometimes schools have hours of observation required. Some schools have specific expectations. When you read their mission statement or you see their things they would like to see you have, they put the community, they might say something like community service and some of those things. Yeah, Shannon, thank you for coming. The identifiable letters of recommendation is another piece to this puzzle. So when you're looking at your school list, no matter how many schools you've decided to apply to, there are schools that specifically indicate what kinds of letters of recommendation you need to grab. And while I don't want you running out and asking for those letters now, you really do need to know what you need, because usually, typically, most students make the requests for letters about sometime between spring break of next spring and the May months when you're getting ready to apply. For faculty, that might be an important piece to know, is that, you know, oftentimes they go off contract in the summer. And so if they know for certain that they're going to need a letter of recommendation, then they know that. That's a huge part of the puzzle. The other thing to know is that physicians, that might not be, their time frame might be a little bit different, and that's okay. Or occupational therapists, that might be different. But you need to know what you need. And then also, it doesn't hurt to have a pretty good idea of what the application process looks like. You know, I rinse and repeat it to you all the time whenever you come in for advising, when you come into these cohort meetings, but seeing it for yourself, helping you understand and put your head in the game is hugely important. So what you should be looking for when you look for a school. Well, if it's a state school, where are you a state resident? Are you from out of state or in state for that school? Do they care? They say that stuff in their fact sheets on their website. Or if you are using a tool like the MSAR and you have paid for the subscription, you can see acceptance rates. You can kind of see how many in-state versus out-of-state students get accepted. My rule of thumb is 20% or higher. You really want to hit that. And, you know, think about it like this. So if I was applying to 10 schools, I would want 6 of those schools to be my breadwinners, to be the ones that absolutely for certain my residency is not going to affect my ability to get into that school, that I like this school, that I meet the prerequisite courses for this school, that I want to live in that location and the cost is manageable, right? You're not taking out so much debt that you won't be able to get out of it. That you like the class size. That's another factor to think about. Gosh, you know, you don't want to be a class of 160. Maybe you look for those smaller class size schools. I do think it's important to buy into mission and philosophy. Now, I know I've seen these missions and philosophies and how many of them are so similar. You're going, how do I differentiate from one or the other? I would encourage you to see if there are any venues where you can interact with some of the medical students or some of the PT students and find out what they think of the place. Does the school actually believe in their philosophy and their way of teaching? And come to the school programs and information sessions that we provide. We'll have a lot in the spring as well. Ask yourself, is research focus something important to you? Another factor to consider as you're getting this list solidified is sit down and ask yourself, what's not negotiable for you? You know, some students are like, I absolutely positively don't want to live in a back east school. I don't want to go back east. I can't see myself doing it. It's non-negotiable. Or gosh, you know, I don't want to live in a rural area, or I don't want to live in an urban area, or what are the things that are, no way, I can't give on those things. I said, if you were applying to 10 schools, 6 of those should be healthy places for you to go, that you meet their requirements and you meet their expectations. and that you look at all of those aspects. The 4 that you would also add to this, they should absolutely positively be dream schools. Why not? If you don't play the lottery, you won't win it. So if you don't put yourself out there and you don't say, hey, I would really love to go to this school, then you won't get into that school, because if you don't apply to it. So I do believe in that idea of doing that. That's why we've had 2 students go to Harvard. That's why we have students at Drexel in Pennsylvania, and students who, gosh, like maybe UW was their dream school, but University of Wisconsin would be really cool too. So I think you need to kind of consider that. So again, looking at your tools, looking at what's available to you. A lot of the schools have YouTube sites and some of that information. So you can look at those things. These are the medical school options. These are the dental and veterinarian options for looking at schools. These are the PT and OT options. These are the pharmacy and PA options. And then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about this, just one quick second. All right. So recently we had a program come to us. Midwestern University has what we call a post-baccalaureate program. It is a formal post-baccalaureate program. And the director of that program is one of my favorite people that I interact with in the organizations that I work with. And he came and he did a presentation called Pulling Back the Curtain. It's available on our website. And one of the things that he talks a lot about is, it may seem mystifying, it may seem frustrating, because it seems like there's all these secrets behind the curtain that you don't know for certain will allow you to be accepted into schools. And so his presentation kind of helps you try and demystify or take that fear out of there and kind of give you a little bit more ways to look at it. He does, I kind of synopsis some of this in terms of looking at schools. Ask yourself the right questions, right? Like, gosh, why do I want to be a physician? Why do I want to be a dentist? Why is this profession right for me? How do I feel like I stack up next to other candidates? And that's where those tools, those databases are so valuable. The MSAR, if you purchase a subscription or you borrow one of our free subscriptions, you can actually see a GPA range. You can see how many people got in with the GPA and how low did they go. You can see what the average is or the median is. The more information you have, the more data you have, the better your decisions can be. You can ask yourself, do I need these things and can I gain them, such as research or healthcare experience? You also need to think about how you might strengthen your application, being honest and touching upon your experiences, doing well on your entrance exams. How to choose the right program. You've seen it come up twice now, location. I think that's important. If a student doesn't want to go to Utah, then they shouldn't go to Utah. If a student doesn't want to go to Florida, they shouldn't go to Florida. Number of students, cost, okay. And where you're getting ready to apply, I think you have a lot more information about where your GPA is to help that be some of the decision factors. But here's the key. When you're considering your GPA, please don't consider the average GPA as your benchmark. In other words, oh, woe is me, that school has a 3.7 GPA, I'm not getting into that school. Well, that's kind of short-sighted, because, if you take a closer look, like let's talk about University of Washington School of Medicine. Their average GPA is a 3.7, but their range is a 3.2 to a 4.0. So they accepted someone with a 3.2. Someone with a 3.2 got into their program. So, that average is important, but it's not the only factor you need to play with. And I always talk about what we call the bubble. So if there's a range, are you in that range? So I'll use the transverse of that. So Washington State University at St. Louis, the lowest GPA they accepted last year for their medical program was a 3.6. So if someone has a 3.4, they're probably not going to get into that school, and that may not be one on their list. Even if their minimum GPA for that school might be a 3.0, that might be one of those 4, right, that they're looking at for schools that might be dream schools. But you need to be smart. You have to pay for these applications in most cases, unless you get financial assistance. And so you want your application to have meaning. Put your money where your mouth is, kind of thing. Think about what you might need to provide them with information. I had one student who applied to Columbia University, didn't have a full resume built, and that was in their secondary requirements. And so he just didn't fill out the secondary because he didn't want to go through the hassle of filling out a resume. That was a choice. Can't get a letter of recommendation that's specifically required. Some of the other things to do that can help you are knowing what things are practitioners are facing in the profession, and how to practice communication skills, like with interviewing and some of those things. So where did it go? Somehow I lost my activity. Okay. So let's go out and do this. So what I'd like to do is, I'm going to leave up this one. I would like you to, whatever program you're interested in terms of medicine or one of these, I would like you to go out to one of these websites. So if you want to do MD, it would be the AAMC website that's posted there on the screen, but put a / and MSAR for MSAR. And then for DO, it's Choose DO Explorer. What I'd like you to do is find the program directory, and I'd like you to look for one of your schools, and I'd like you to go out to their website, and I'd like you to glean the information that you can find. And I'm going to give you about 4 minutes to do that, okay? And if you have questions, I'm here. So you can post them in the chat, or you can just take your mute off and ask. Just remember what you're looking for too. You're looking for prerequisite courses. You're looking for fact sheets to find out what kind of class they accept. You're looking for GPA ranges if you can find it. You're also looking for letters of recommendation list, like what do they require for letters of recommendation. So we'll give everybody about 1 more minute and then we'll start talking about maybe some of the frustrating things that happen while trying to do this. All right. So as you're wrapping up looking at that, what were some of the frustrations that you might have had while trying to look for a school? Was easy peasy, lemon squeezy?
A lot of the different schools have different metrics published in different ways and in different places. So even using that, the limited version of the MSAR version, it's not always all in the same place.
You're right. And I can agree with that. You know, if the world was perfect, we'd have standardized websites for this information and the standardized metrics. But that's also what makes medical schools special, right? Is that they're all different and they all have kind of different philosophies of what they care about, what they look at. The MSAR subscription version does have the metrics the same in terms of in-state versus out-of-state versus international, how many applications were accepted, how many interviews were done, and how many actual acceptances were built. So that is a nice tool for that. PT-CAS, the physical therapy one, they're very standardized because it's one database and it's really, really handy to use. So, but I agree with you. I think that can be very frustrating. And the key is that if you can glean as much as you can from each of the school websites, that's more powerful than just trying to get frustrated and throw your hands in the air and saying, okay, well, I don't even know. Anybody else have any concerns or questions about this process? Did anybody find something interesting that they didn't know about? Did anybody look at the letter of recommendation requirements for the school they looked at? Elsie, you did? What did it say?
I looked at Oregon Health Science University and it said that they wanted 3 letters from faculty and then hopefully 1 letter from like an outside someone too.
Okay. But they weren't very specific about who that outside one was.
Mm-mm.
Okay. Did they say anything about committee letters?
It did say that. I'm pretty sure it said that they took committee letters, but I didn't.
So I'm just being open and honest with everybody. Committee letters are not something that Boise State University does. Most schools don't require a committee letter. They require letters and they say they prefer a committee letter. But if your school doesn't provide a committee letter, then they usually specify what they would want from in its place. So for example, in most cases, I've seen a committee letter be something like a committee and what could be in its place could be a science instructor, a pre-health advisor, and a physician or the practitioner for the field that you're interested in, as an example. But we don't do committee letters. So if you see that, just know, okay, Erin said Boise State doesn't do that. So I need to see what the option is if a committee letter is not provided. Does that make sense? All right. So you did it. You did it for 4 minutes. You maybe didn't go full on and get all the information, but I know you're fully capable of doing this. And if anything, if you get a list and you want to set up an individual advising appointment and go through and calculate your GPA and look at some of those things and hone your list, I'm more than happy to do that. I am getting a little booked out before Christmas because I am going to take some time off for myself because I haven't taken any vacation this whole semester. But I will be back in the office January after January 1. And so we can certainly set up appointments then as well. Okay. All right. So why informational interviewing? Well, I want to put this to you because I want you to think about something. I want you to think about informational interviewing in two kinds of points of view. Number one, you may still need some kind of experience, whether it be observation with an occupational therapist, or that you want to gain more experience with a physician, or you want to do some observation and shadowing, but you are limited because of COVID or your circumstances. You don't know necessarily a ton of physicians or a ton of the practitioners for the field that you want to pursue. This is an excellent way for you to start creating that relationship. And so informational interviewing is something that's huge and important, I think, for that purpose. So it can help you gain more experience by doing a 20-minute interview with the practitioner. Oftentimes they have more ability to do something like this with you via Zoom or in person over coffee or over the phone than they might to actually create and establish a full-length observation piece. But maybe with that relationship that you just built over 20 minutes, they might be able to throw you a bone and say, hey, you might want, if you're really still interested in this, you might want to do some observation with me. Or one of my favorite questions in an informational interview is there someone else you think I should speak to about this? That creates names. That creates the ability for you to go, oh, well, I can talk to this person and I can talk to this person. And, an informational interview is part of observation in the sense that you may not be doing a full-length interview across from the physician, but you're asking questions as you go. Or if it's physician assistant or dental school, you might be doing something similar to that expectation. The second reason I bring this up to you all tonight is that it's scary to ask for letters of recommendation. It's daunting. And I think a lot of you might feel a little even more afraid because your faculty members, you saw them in class via Zoom, or it's been an online course that you've been focused in, and you don't feel necessarily connected with that faculty member. So I'm proposing that you do an informational interview, that you actually say, hey, Dr. Cornell, I've really enjoyed your class. I'm wondering, as part of my exploration into the world of medicine, or as part of my explanation into the world of dentistry, I really want to see if I can do an informational interview with a couple of faculty members. Would you be willing to do that? And ask them questions. Ask them about why they've chosen the field of chemistry or biology or whatever faculty member you're speaking with. This is not a one-way street. It's not you asking questions and them answering them. They might come up some questions for you that might create this relational conversational moment where you get to know them a little bit better and they get to know you a little bit better. And then they realize, okay, I really like this person in my class. I've enjoyed them. They have things put together. They understand the concepts and trying to share. Maybe they would be great in my research lab, or maybe they'd be great as a TA, or maybe they might need to get in as, maybe they want to be a learning assistant. These are things that can help you. And so if you feel like you don't have a science instructor, go through all your science classes and ask yourself, okay, which ones did I enjoy? Which classes did I enjoy? And go back and interview those faculty members. That's like lighting setting the spark, or it's, planting a seed for future endeavors that you might interact with that faculty member, or the possibility that jogs their memory of who you are, and it helps them be able to be more willing to say yes to a letter of recommendation. And I also want you all to realize that getting the word no is not a bad thing. It's like dodging a bullet. I interacted with a student at one point who wanted me to write him a letter of recommendation, and I had never met him. I would not be writing a very good letter. I would not be giving him the best due that he needed. It wouldn't have been positive because I didn't even know very much about him. And they can read into that. I am so sorry, you guys. 3 kids, they just don't get it sometimes, and they're under 11. So. I love my children. I love my children. All right. So informational interviewing is a way to access. It's a way to gain that opportunity. And like I said, no is not a bad thing, because you would rather have someone say, no, I'm sorry, I can't do that, because you don't want them to write a bad letter. You want them to write a strong letter. I don't always say yes. I want to know and make sure that students understand that there's so many cool things out there, and there's so many people out there that they interact with. They don't realize can be letters. So this is a way, though, to help you through your spring semester try and foster that. So we did, I'm not going to go through this actually tonight. I will send you the PowerPoints after we get the recording downloaded for the slideshow, but we also have a video from Kelsey Nelson in the Career Services about informational interviews. Just remember, it's not a job interview. You're interviewing them to get to know that person and their profession. And so there's lots of steps in here, and I'm not going to go through these tonight because I really want to get to the meat of what I want to talk about with you tonight. But informational interviewing is a way for you to start opening doors to gaining those letters of recommendation that you're going to ask for next semester. And so I strongly recommend that you participate in these kinds of activities. Okay, so I will send you the slideshows and the link to the video that Kelsey did. It's 15 minutes. It's great. She did a really great job, and she uses examples. And the other part is just to make sure that you follow up. Again, in an informational interview, who else could I talk to about this? Oh, well, so-and-so's doing this and so-and-so's doing that. And then the last part is making sure that you thank them. Always be able to reach out to them. I personally think it's a bad idea to ask for a letter of recommendation in an email, unless you know that person and they spend like almost every day with you. I would say you should email them and say you would like to meet with them via Zoom or in person or via phone, and ask them that way. Make the extra effort to set away some time for them to make them feel like you care. You're not just sending off another email. If you're going to send an email, you need to be appropriate. In other words, don't say, hey, so-and-so, or even just start off with your request. Think about your etiquette and how you do that. There's a tool called postable.com where you can actually send thank you cards, and they can even look like they're handwritten, and you don't have to do anything but send it off to them. It's pretty cool. All right. The last part, our last stretch of what I hoped you would accomplish by the end of the semester, or at least by February, was starting to get your experiences into a cohesive thought process. And so we're going to work on that a little bit tonight. I call it the collection process. 8 times out of 10 when I talk to students, most have not been journaling during their college career. It has been an afterthought, and I think it's hugely important. And so what I recommend is trying to keep it simple to start and growing from that experience. So what I recommend is 10 minutes a day. Using your first 5 minutes of those 10 minutes to write out and line up your experiences. And you can use these categories I've listed in mind. You can ask yourself, did I volunteer today? Did I gain leadership experience today? Did I research today? Did I interact with patients or clients today? Did I have any moment where I observed the career or profession I'm interested in? Yes. Did I have something fun happen today? Like, did I enjoy myself today? Did I have an aha moment? Did I learn something that was extremely important to me at this moment that just blew you out of the water? Did you read a book that was like, oh my gosh, I learned so much? Did I work? So, for example, with work, I think sometimes students don't translate that their job that they might have that's getting them by, getting their dollars by, is extremely valuable to the application, as much so than working in the healthcare community. So for example, I had a young woman who wanted to apply to pharmacy school, and she was a barista at Dutch Brothers. And Dutch Brothers, you know, that typically Dutch Brothers, if you go there, I don't know if any of you are coffee people, but they usually have one or two baristas there. So they're in charge of themselves. They have to make sure they have their accurate inventory. They communicate with clients and customers. They also have to be very planned and understand so that they don't get a line out the door, and they have to be problem solvers. Oh crap, we're out of ... What can we use in substitution of that? And she really didn't see any value in what she did as Dutch Brothers, other than it was making her some cash so she could live. And I started pointing out what a pharmacist has to do. So a pharmacist does have to count pills. That's not the only thing they do, but they have to count. So they have to count cups. They have to count how much ounces of flavoring they have and how much beans and things that they have. And she went, oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that. The same goes for things like volunteerism. Volunteerism is categorized as any moment where you gave of yourself without getting money for it, and out getting a prize, and out without getting credit. So we do lots of things in our daily life. Now, those little tiny things maybe aren't going to add up to volunteerism that we would expect, but they create moments where we say, gosh, I love doing that. And so if I could do that as a volunteer activity, that would be really cool. So for example, it doesn't have to be just medically related volunteerism. However, volunteering in a medical field helps you with patient exposure. But here's the cool part. So one of my students, she walked dogs for the Humane Society every weekend for about 4 hours. She did it religiously every weekend. So her 4 hours added up over 52 weeks pretty quickly, right? It doesn't have anything to do with medicine, but she understood why she chose that. One, she liked the interaction with people while she was walking their dogs. She also liked walking the dogs because it gave her balance in her life. And she talked about that in her application to medical school. I had another student who, she said, gosh, I'm so frustrated. I don't have any healthcare experience. I don't have any volunteer experience. And I said, well, what do you do for fun? And she told me she painted. And I suggested that she see if she could find a venue where she could teach painting, or whether she could work with our community and like Big Brothers Big Sisters and do painting in that way. And she was like, that's a cool idea. I didn't even think about that. And so what I want you to do is, I don't want you to cut yourself off at the ankles. I want you to write out everything you did today. And I want you to be smart about it and realize that you've done lots of things. Now, is everything going to translate into one of these things? No, but it's going to give you fuel for fire. It's going to do two things. Number one, it's going to say, gosh, well, I did that thing. And now how could I use that thing for one of these other options that I know I'm going to need for my goal? The second thing it's also going to do is, it's who you are. You are this person right now. There's reasons why you're self-determined and why you have responsibility to others and some of those concepts that go with it. So if you take 5 minutes and you just write about your day and you get them written out, then you're going to want to take it a step further and you're going to want to pick one of those things that's sticking out in your brain and write 1 or 2 sentences describing it. And then you're going to want to write 1 or 2 sentences that say, well, why should I care about it? Like, is it important? Is it valuable? Do I enjoy it or hate it? Because having things that we hate, we know then that we hate them. And then you want to kind of take it as another step further and say, well, how could I use this for good? In other words, what can I do with that from there? After you do that, you're going to want to take 5 more minutes and you're going to want to write about last week. So as a whole, last week, did you accomplish any of these things in these categories? And do the same thing. Journal for about 1 to 2 lines that say, what did you do? And why is it meaningful? If you do this every single day and you go back a week every single day, so in other words, you're not going to do last week, you're going to do 2 weeks from now. And then you're going to do 4 weeks from now. And then you're going to do 6 months from now. And then you're going to do a whole year from now. Getting this list, but if you were to do this by February, you probably have quite a bit of information. You would be able to ask yourself the following questions. Am I ready? I'm kind of ready, but I might need some more experiences. Well, you have time to get those experiences, or you don't, right? Oh, I don't think I have time. I'm going to need more time before I apply. So you'll be able to help you answer those questions. And it'll also help you with the writing that we will get involved in next year. So in January, we will be hosting our personal statement workshop as part of our professional and graduate school workshop series. And that'll be in January. In February, during application cohort, we will be doing some very fun activities to help you start writing your experiences for your application. In March, we'll actually help you understand the letter writing process. In April, I'll have all of the information for the application cycles for all of the professional pathways I help with. And we'll be doing an application workshop to go over the entire application before it goes live, typically in May for med and dent, and typically in July for PT, PA, and some of those other areas. So basically, we're just going to kind of spoon feed you with the efforts of helping you write these things out so that you have opportunities to do some of those things. So I want you to get a list. So we're just going to try it out in just 1 second. So what I'm going to have you do is I want you to take the next 2 minutes and think about today. Ask yourself from one of these categories, what did you do? What have you done between now and almost 6 o'clock? So you have 2 minutes to just jot that down, just it could be bullet points, it could be sentences, whatever it is, but you have 2 minutes. As you're wrapping up that list, I want you to take about 1 minute and pick one that you're going to describe. Okay, so we're going to take a minute to write 1 or 2 sentences to describe what was it, asking the following questions. What was it? When was it? Who was it with? Why did I do it? Okay, so 1 or 2 sentences. Okay, so I'm gonna open up some breakout rooms. I'm opening up 3 rooms, 2 people in each room. And I'm gonna ask you to tell the person in the room or describe to them that experience. But take it one step further. Don't just describe it to them, but tell them why you do it. And then let the other person go. So we're gonna do about 2 minutes, 1 minute for each person to kind of go through that. So I'll call you back. And so I'm opening the rooms now. So go join those rooms and share.